Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, imagine this. What if there's a design tool out there that could do pretty much everything a big platform like Figma does?
Hmm.
But, and here's the kicker, it's completely free and open source.
Okay.
And it throws in some of those premium features that, Figma usually makes you pay that monthly subscription for.
Right. That sounds, almost too good to be true.
Exactly. It sounds like a bit of a design fantasy, right? Well, I've actually spent the last couple of weeks really putting an alternative like this to the test, used it on actual projects.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I have to say, it's genuinely made me rethink some things about design software,
Yeah.
what's possible without opening your wallet or giving up control.
So that's what we're diving into today then, this specific tool.
Precisely.
Okay. So today our deep dive is going to focus squarely on Penpot. That's P-E-N-P-O-T, pronounced P-E-N-Pot.
Got it.
They're a free open source design tool, and it's really starting to get some serious buzz in the design world.
I've heard a bit about it.
Yeah, and our goal here today isn't just to list features. We want to give you the real insight so you can figure out, could this actually replace Figma in your day-to-day work?
Right. Is it a viable alternative?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We'll look at the unique stuff it offers that maybe Figma doesn't, where it really shines, and ultimately help you decide if it's worth investing your time to check it out.
Okay, sounds good. So where do we start? First impressions.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. So the moment I opened Penpot, honestly, it was like immediate deja vu.
Uh-huh.
It looks so similar to Figma's interface. It's almost uncanny, like an open source twin, but I don't know, it felt maybe more complete somehow.
Interesting.
All the stuff you expect is there.
Yeah.
Your drafts, pages, layers, assets, they're all on the left.
Okay, standard layout.
Yeah. And then your design settings, your prototyping controls, they're over on the right, just like you're probably used to.
Right, so very familiar territory for Figma users. But you mentioned a difference.
Well, there is a subtle one, yeah.
Okay, what's that? Yeah, the main toolbar. It's subtle, but it's definitely there. Penpot puts its main toolbar at the top.
Instead of the bottom, like Figma.
Exactly.
Oh.
And, for a lot of designers, especially maybe those who came up using more traditional desktop software, that top position actually feels a bit more natural. It's a small thing, but it's kind of nice.
I could see that.
And then when you actually look in the toolbox, well, it's got everything you need. All the basics are covered.
Like the move tool, frame tool.
Yep. Move, frame, rectangle, ellipse, path, the draw tool.
Mm-hmm.
They're all present and accounted for.
They work the same way, with the same properties.
Pretty much identically. Each tool has those editable properties you'd expect.
Right.
Adjust position, layout, stroke on a frame. It's there.
Okay.
Change the fill or add a blur to a rectangle.
Yeah.
All the standard typography settings for text, all there too. It behaves just like you'd think.
So the core design functionality is solid and familiar. What about making things interactive? Prototyping.
Yeah, good question. That's crucial.
It really is. And here again, Penpot's prototyping functions work. Well, almost identically to Figma's, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You can easily add your interactions, set up your triggers like on-click or on-hover, set the destination screens for your flows, apply different animations. It really covers, the whole 9 yards for building out standard user journeys.
Okay, that's impressive for a free tool. Is it exactly the same level as Figma?
That's where there's a slight difference.
Okay.
Okay.
So looking at the bigger picture, yeah, Penpot's prototyping is definitely robust. It's quite capable. But it's true, it's maybe not quite as sophisticated in every single tiny detail as Figma currently is.
How so?
Well, one specific example is interpolation curves, for controlling the easing of animations.
Right.
Penpot offers 5 different curves. Figma, on the other hand, has 13.
Okay. That sounds like a noticeable difference.
It sounds like it on paper, definitely. But honestly, for the vast majority of stuff you do day to day, like demonstrating flows or basic interactions, those 5 curves are more than enough.
So functionally, it gets the job done smoothly.
Absolutely. For 90% of what you're probably doing, you won't miss those extra curves. It delivers smooth, effective transitions where you need them.
Okay, so at this point, someone listening might be thinking, all right, it sounds a lot like Figma, just maybe slightly different here and there. Why would I switch?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is. And that was exactly where my head was at, too, initially. Why bother changing until I found the stuff Penpot gives you for free.
But wait, there's more.
Moment. Exactly. The things that Figma makes you pay a premium for, This is where Penpot starts to get really compelling.
Okay, I'm listening. This is where it gets interesting.
Yeah, this is really where Penpot starts to differentiate itself. And frankly, where it started to properly win me over, especially thinking about features locked behind Figma's paywall. Let's kick off with the built-in Inspect tab in Penpot.
Okay, the Inspect tab, what does that do?
Tell us about that.
Right. So the Inspect tab is, well, it's a real game changer, especially for developer handoff. It lets developers directly view and copy code snippets right from your design files.
Oh, nice. Like CSS.
Exactly. Clean CSS-friendly output for things like element positions, font sizes, border radius, colors,
Yeah.
all that stuff developers need.
Okay, that sounds super useful.
It is. Now, here's the crucial part. This exact same kind of functionality in Figma. It's called Dev Mode.
Right, I know Dev Mode.
And it's locked behind their subscription. Costs, what, like $15 a month per seat?
Yeah, something like that.
So the value of having this built right into Penpot, completely free, it's immense. Especially if you're a freelancer or a small team, maybe not ready for that monthly cost. It just smooths out that whole design to dev process. Saves time, less back and forth.
That's a huge plus. Free Dev Mode, basically.
Pretty much.
Wow. Okay, what else? You mentioned other things.
I did.
Yeah, it doesn't stop there. Another really significant advantage is Penpot's integrated tokens panel.
Design tokens, built in.
Yep, right there in the main interface. Easily accessible next to your layers and assets. Just where you kind of expect it to be.
Okay, contrast that with Figma. How do you usually handle tokens there?
Well, yeah, think about the typical Figma workflow for tokens. You're often hunting down third-party plugins, right?
Right, like Token Studio or something similar?
Exactly. And a lot of those plugins, they might have their own costs or limitations on the free tier, adding this extra layer of complexity and potentially expense.
Mm-hmm. It gets complicated.
It does, and this really highlights a core difference in philosophy, I think. Penpot seems to have this core-first approach.
Right.
Meaning the essential stuff, things designers really need day to day, like dev mode access or design tokens. They're baked right into the app itself.
Instead of relying on this whole ecosystem of plugins that might cost you extra.
Precisely. Fewer subscriptions to juggle, fewer potential compatibility headaches, just a more streamlined experience out of the box. I mean, just as another small example, I found a free aspect ratio plugin within Penpot that did exactly what I needed, whereas I remember paying for something similar back in my Figma days.
Huh. It makes you stop and think, doesn't it? Like, how much are you spending on all those little Figma plugins each month? Adds up.
It really can. Okay, so free dev mode, built-in tokens, those are pretty big deals. But now let's shift gears a bit. There's another feature that, for me personally, is maybe the most exciting differentiator.
Oh, what's that?
The ability to self-host Penpot.
Self-host, as in run it yourself.
Exactly. You can run Penpot on your own servers.
Wow, okay. Tell me more about that. What does that actually mean in practice?
Well, maybe you can elaborate.
Sure. So self-hosting, fundamentally, means you can deploy and manage your very own instance of the Penpot application.
On my own infrastructure.
Correct. You could use services like, say, LSTO to help automate the initial setup and make it a bit easier. Or if you're more technically inclined, you can deploy it manually using something like Docker, which is a really common platform for this kind of thing.
And the benefit of doing that is?
Control and privacy. The implications are pretty profound, actually. When you self-host your designs, your data, all your intellectual property, it never has to leave servers you control.
I see. So it doesn't go to Penpot's cloud or anyone else's.
Exactly. Think about the benefit for, say, a freelancer working with highly sensitive client information, or maybe a larger company working on proprietary interfaces where data security is paramount.
Yeah, for sure. Or regulated industries.
Absolutely. It offers this layer of security and data sovereignty that, frankly, cloud-only services just can't match by their very nature. It gives you complete peace of mind about where your critical work actually lives.
So that's the beauty of it then. Penpot gives you a real choice. Use their cloud service, similar to Figma.
Right. Convenient, easy to start.
Or, if you need it, opt for that complete control and privacy by self-hosting. You can tailor it to your specific security requirements.
It's a flexibility you don't often see. And, speaking of flexibility and reaching more people, that brings up another important aspect, inclusivity.
How so?
Through language support, Penpot has built-in support for, get this, over 30 languages.
30? Wow. How does that compare to Figma?
Well, Figma officially supports, I think, 6 languages currently. Often, if you need more, you're back to relying on plugins again.
Right.
So Penpot supporting over 30 languages natively, that's a huge difference. And it's a direct result of being open source.
The community contributes translations.
Exactly. There's this active, vibrant community constantly working to expand that language support, making the tool genuinely accessible to designers all over the world. People can work in their native language, which lowers barriers and just fosters broader collaboration.
That's actually really impressive. It feels remarkably refreshing, doesn't it? In this world where almost every piece of software is pushing subscriptions and trying to lock you into their ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Vendor lock-in.
Yeah. To have a genuinely powerful alternative that clearly prioritizes things like user privacy, control, and choice, it really stands out. Feels like a breath of fresh air.
I agree. It's a different philosophy.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the features, the philosophy, which is all great. But theory is one thing. How does Penpot actually hold up, when the rubber meets the road?
Yeah, the practical application.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, I spent 2 solid weeks using it for real design work. That included designing basically a whole mobile app interface, start to finish, entirely within Penpot. I really tried to push it.
Okay, so what was that experience like? Did the workflow hold up?
Surprisingly well, actually.
That's great to hear. I mean, what specifically worked well in that real-world test?
Well, the core stuff was solid.
Yeah, for example, auto layout. Absolutely critical these days for responsive design, right? It worked exactly as I expected it to. No surprises there.
Okay, good. Components, design systems.
Component creation felt really intuitive. Building out reusable elements was straightforward. And the design system features, maintaining consistency across screens. They performed reliably.
Nice. What about collaboration? That's key for teams.
Yeah, also crucial. And again, pretty impressive. The real-time editing, seeing multiple cursors moving around, worked smoothly. Adding comments, tracking version history, all that collaborative stuff functioned just like you'd expect from a modern cloud-aware tool.
And exporting. Getting assets out for developers.
Also quite straightforward.
Yeah.
Good options there. You can export in multiple formats, different resolutions like 1x, 2x, 3x, and do batch exports easily, which developers always appreciate. It really felt like a complete workflow package.
Okay, so the core design and collaboration seems solid. What about the prototyping in practice? You mentioned it wasn't quite as feature-rich.
Right.
So yeah, on the prototyping side, look, I'll be honest, it doesn't have every single bell and whistle that Figma's bleeding-edge prototyping might offer right now. But for my mobile app project, it handled everything I threw at it capably. I needed to show micro-interactions, some fairly complex page transitions, different component states, and it did all of that, and with a surprising degree of smoothness, actually. It delivered exactly what I needed to communicate the intended user experience effectively.
That's really the main goal, isn't it? Effective communication.
Exactly.
So while Penpot is clearly a very strong contender, and you had a good experience, it's important we give a balanced view, right? It's probably not perfect.
No, definitely not perfect. And that's okay. There are, some rough edges here and there, little things you might notice.
Like what, for instance?
Well, the plugin ecosystem is one area.
Smaller than Figma's currently.
Yeah, significantly smaller right now compared to Figma's vast library. So if you rely heavily on very specific niche plugins, you might not find an equivalent yet.
Okay, that's a fair point. Anything else?
Maybe some really advanced edge case features might be missing compared to Figma. And naturally, if you're coming directly from years of Figma use, there is a small learning curve.
Minimal, you'd say.
Yeah, it's a minimal. It's very manageable, mainly because the interface is so familiar overall. You'll pick it up really quickly.
And it's worth remembering, it's open source, right? The community is growing fast, so those rough edges, they'll likely get smoothed out over time. The plugin ecosystem will probably expand too.
Absolutely. That's the power of open source. But here's the main takeaway for me, and I think it's a really powerful one. For the vast, vast majority of design work, the everyday UI builds, the component libraries, the standard prototyping Penpot delivers everything you need.
Everything essential.
Everything essential.
Yeah.
And crucially, it does it without ever asking for your credit card details.
That's the bottom line.
It is. So I challenge anyone listening, think about that one Figma feature you rely on most. The one you think you absolutely couldn't live without. Is it possible Penpot could actually cover it for you?
It's worth investigating.
It really is, because after using it extensively in real-world scenarios, I can confidently say Penpot isn't just a viable alternative to Figma. In some really important ways, especially around cost, privacy, and control, it's arguably better.
Strong words.
Well, it made a strong impression.
Okay.
So let's try and wrap this up then. Let's summarize the key takeaways from this deep dive into Penpot.
Sounds good.
The main thing is, it's clearly far more than just some free Figma clone. That does it a disservice.
Agreed. It stands on its own.
It's a genuinely powerful, robust design tool. It respects your privacy, which is huge. And it's open source.
Key differentiators.
Yeah. And we've highlighted those standout features, that built-in code inspection, basically replacing a paid Figma feature.
Inspect app, yeah.
The unique self-hosting capability, giving you that unparalleled data control if you need it.
Huge for certain users.
It's really impressive. Multilingual support, making it accessible globally, and that core-first approach you mentioned.
Right, avoiding the plug-in treadmill.
Exactly. Saving you from that potential nickel and diming of endless plug-in subscriptions.
Yeah, putting it all in context, I think the conversation we're having here, it isn't really about demanding everyone abandon Figma tomorrow, right?
No, of course not.
Figma is still a fantastic tool, huge community, lots of resources. But this is about highlighting a really solid alternative, one that genuinely respects your privacy and, let's be honest, your wallet.
It gives you a choice.
It gives you a powerful choice in a market that's becoming increasingly centralized around a few big players and subscription models.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. As you go about your work, maybe mull this over. In this digital world we're in, so dominated by subscriptions and these closed proprietary ecosystems, what does the rise of powerful, genuinely capable open source tools like Penpot actually signify? What could it mean for the future of how we create things digitally?
That's a great question. And maybe how could embracing alternatives like this actually empower you, the user, with more control, more freedom, not just over your creative work, but over your data, your intellectual property too?
Yeah.
It's a potential shift, isn't it? It could sort of redefine how we think about ownership and access in the digital tools we rely on every day.
Absolutely. The conversation is definitely broadening beyond just features now. It's about freedom, control, accessibility, really interesting times.
Indeed.
Well, thank you for deep diving into Penpot with us today.
My pleasure.